Have you ever looked at your life and wondered, why does this keep happening to me? A new relationship, a new job, a new opportunity, a new chapter, and somehow it starts to feel strangely familiar. Different person, different situation, different year, but the same experience. For a long time, I thought I was just unlucky, until I realised I wasn't repeating the same people or the same situations. I was repeating patterns. And sometimes you're not stuck, you're just repeating yourself. Welcome to the YALARA Podcast. I'm Naomi Gershik and I'll be your host for today's episode. At YALARA, we're exploring what it means to redefine modern female identity on our own terms, to move beyond inherited expectations, external definitions of success, and the paths we've been told we're supposed to follow. Through conversations about identity, alignment, self-trust, personal growth, and building a life that genuinely feels like your own, we're creating a space for women who know there has to be another way forward. Not just individually, but together. In this episode, I want to break down what it actually looks like when you start noticing those patterns, the uncomfortable realizations, the moments where you have to be honest with yourself, and the changes I made that completely shifted the way I showed up in my life. Because when you understand what you're repeating, you finally have the power to choose something different. Have you ever felt like you're in a new relationship, or you're in a new job, or you're trying a new skill, or you're on a new venture, and what starts to feel really new, but actually quickly feels very familiar and like a repeat of the same experience you've had before, just in a different font? I'm going to talk a lot about relationships in this episode as an example, but this absolutely applies to your financial patterns, your job patterns, your friendships, how you show up for yourself, just anything that you have repeat experiences with, or you're trying a new version of something. This all applies. For example, financially, we might be going, I really want to save, but then we don't ever end up saving as much as we want. But relationships, whether they're romantic, whether they're family relationships, friends, or just how we relate to other people, especially romantic ones, they really reflect back to us our flaws and what we're doing. So if we keep attracting the same experiences, it's actually a reflection of something we're doing to cause that. Now, don't take this as if something or someone is treating you the wrong way, that is your fault. That is absolutely not your fault. You're not asking for bad things to happen to you. So whenever I'm talking about this and I'm saying about attracting it, it is not your doing. Other people are choosing bad ways of treating you. That being said, there are things that we do that contribute to behaviors. Your behaviors may have contributed to them feeling more distant or seeking things elsewhere, often in relationships, whether they have a similar ending, whether someone stops showing up for you, you're being treated in a way that you don't feel appreciated, you feel disrespected, you feel like you're not worthy to your partner, the people that you're choosing that have the possibility of treating you that way. It's self-sabotage, actually. Sometimes if we know someone's going to treat us a certain way, it's what we're used to, it's what we found attractive before, it's what feels familiar. We will choose that because we know how it's going to end. So it's a form of self-protection. If someone's hurt us in the past, whatever hurt that has been, in whatever situation, if we're now going out to find a new situation, sometimes we go with the preconception of the next person's going to treat us the same way, even though they're a completely different person. So we're just projecting that onto them, which isn't fair to them, first of all. But secondly, I think there's something deeper there in actually who you're choosing to surround yourself with or engage with in another similar experience. And I'm not saying that you want to be hurt again. I'm not saying that you want to be treated that way. What I'm saying is we actually choose what is familiar and we can predict rather than what is unknown but is healthy. I'll say that again. For the people in the back, we choose what we can predict the outcome of to protect ourselves, what is familiar, rather than what we actually want and know we need deep down, even if we don't know what that looks like. It's because it's the fear of the unknown. We choose what we know over what we don't know, even if it's unhealthy. I've done it too. We all do it. This is something everyone does. If I speak a little bit to relationships that I've had in the past, I have repeatedly chosen avoidant men. Men that choose not to speak to me and shut down. Men that choose that they still want me, but they aren't going to talk to me and work with me. Even though I thought I was choosing someone that was going to choose me every day, I actually was choosing a pattern very different. I've had men that have put me on a pedestal and treated me as if I was a celebrity without sounding conceited, without having an ego. A few of the guys really did put me on a pedestal and see me as better than them. Even if I saw them as an equal, what happens when you do that is you're in a relationship with someone that is a celebrity, that isn't real, someone that is a dream, someone that doesn't feel like a reality. And you start looking at them as if they're an ornament that you can't touch because then it's going to smash into loads of pieces. So you decide, I'm not even going to go near it. I'm not even going to talk to it and work out my problems with it, apologize or admit there's something wrong or say that something's not working for me about them because they're amazing, and if I say anything they're falling off, even though if anyone's put you on a pedestal or you're putting anyone else on a pedestal, because I've been on both ends of the stick, I've also put someone on a pedestal. When you do that, you create a certain pressure for them to live up to, even if that's not true, even if they're not expecting you to be perfect, but they just genuinely think you are perfect to them. It creates a dynamic where they're scared to not meet your expectations. They're scared to disappoint you. But equally, if they're not scared to do that and they really are secure in themselves and secure in the relationship on their side, the person putting the person on the pedestal, they're not admitting faults. Because if this person's so amazing, they couldn't possibly have a fault that would make them less than. So what happens is they stop showing up. This is one pattern. Another one, which I think a lot of us are very guilty to, especially those of us that are more naturally anxiously attached. I know attachment styles, it's very trending, but there is some truth in it. You don't just have to put yourself in a box. You can be different ones in different situations. But when you feel like something's loosening from your grasp, you're like clinging onto it for dear life because you couldn't possibly lose it. You're anxious about losing it. A lot of us are so guilty of this, especially when we really care about someone. They mean so much to us and we don't possibly want to let that person out of our lives. So we compromise on our own boundaries. I say compromise, it's not even compromise, we fold. We put our own respect for ourselves aside. I don't want to say lose self-respect, but the way we're showing ourselves respect aside, the way we would typically honour ourselves if we were being totally selfish. Because this person being in our lives is more important than how we treat ourselves. But actually, the more you cling on, the more it pushes that person away. Or at least if they're an avoidant. And actually, if you stand still and hold your ground, they'll come back to you. If they want you, they'll come back to you. They're just putting the space back. You've leaned in a little bit and that's made them pull back a bit. This was something I realised that I've been doing. That's them choosing to not communicate and to shut down. You don't deserve that. However, the same breath, what I was doing was I was leaning in it because I need to make sure I have them in my grasp and they're not going anywhere. Because that made me feel stable. It made me feel like I was in control. What you want is actually to be able to predict when this person's going to stay and when they're going to leave. And that comes from a place of either somewhere in your childhood or past experiences that have been emotionally forming for you, where you've experienced emotional volatility, where you couldn't predict if someone was going to show up for you or if they were going to be there or how they were going to react to you and what you were saying. You're walking on eggshells. Environments with emotional volatility cause this need to be in control and this need to know that this person is going to stay near you, this person that you're being vulnerable with, you're emotionally susceptible to being hurt by them. And if you can control that you're not going to be hurt by them, but actually in clinging, what's happening is you're pushing them far away. No one wants to be on a leash. No one wants to feel like they're under control of someone else. This is something that I had to really learn about myself, about my past and forming relationships for me, that I was experiencing environments where I couldn't predict how someone was going to react. If they were going to shout, if they were going to shut down, if they were going to turn the table and make me feel guilty, if they were going to show love. Bear in mind also, the reason why we even seek out these people, yes, is for familiarity, because we know what to expect. We know they can be up and down and around, and we subconsciously choose that. We're not on purpose choosing someone that is going to cause us emotional stress, but we are choosing what we think we know we can control, because it makes us feel like we can be in the driver's seat, because that's more familiar and that's more predictable. Someone else being unpredictable is more predictable to us than someone that is healthy and we haven't experienced and isn't going to be unpredictable. Isn't that crazy? So we choose the person that's going to be unpredictable because that is more predictable. And this is something that I've really had to look back and reflect on, especially since my last relationship. That really changed the way I felt about myself in relationships, but also about the partners that I was choosing. In order to find the right person, I had to heal. When I started healing, the first thing I did was I came back to myself. I was throwing myself back into the things that lit me up, that I really loved doing, and made me feel a sense of normalcy again and a sense of stability. It just helps us to feel like we have a sense of control, especially when we're going through emotional turmoil. You can probably relate to this. The first thing you do out of a massive instability is do the things that you can control. Your routine is massive. It was definitely something that I mastered and got so good at. I was really throwing myself into the gym, and I was a gym goer already, but just moving your body and regulating your hormones really, really helps, especially as a woman. And that doesn't mean physically exerting ourselves every single day, pushing. It just means going for a walk, doing some stretching, doing some light movement, going to the gym if you want to go to the gym, if that's what you like, playing a sport, going to dance, going to those really fun bungee dance jumping classes I see online everywhere that look really fun, and like Spider-Man or something. Moving your body, just having a rhythm, eating good food, fueling, sleeping. Oh my gosh, if you've really dealt with heavy emotions, make sure that you have a good long sleep after that, because that will feel so healing and energizing. Just the basics. I was listening to podcasts every day that were just changing my perspective, healing my thoughts, having a thought for the day. Just something where I could go actively. Today, I'm going to listen to this podcast. It's going to give me one thought as I'm getting ready in the morning. And then throughout the day, I just have to implement that one thought. So I wasn't just listening to it and then putting it aside. I was listening to it and then doing something about it. And it was consolidating. Just by doing one thing every single day, slowly over time, these lessons that I was hearing on repeat were becoming repetitive because they were sinking in, they were landing, they were becoming part of my life. Sometimes you can listen to something and it's not the right thing, and that's absolutely fine. You get to choose what lessons you take. Don't just take it without questioning it. Really think about it and how it applies for you. I picked up a new hobby. I started reading. I was always someone that was like, I wish I loved reading, but I found a book that was such an easy read that it meant I didn't want to put the book down, was so gripped. And that was the first time I fell in love with reading. It was during all of this growth. So that was really, really, really special. Whatever it is, be creative. Go create something. Do pottery. I know there's people that are going horse riding for the first time since they were a kid. Whatever it is that you did as a kid, go and do it now. It's so healing. Go travel. Go to a new place. Go explore. I was just thriving so much because I felt this new sense of self again. I did what was making me happy, and it did give me that sense of stability that I was seeking. But it wasn't really solving the deeper emotional patterns under everything. I realized after a certain amount of time, it was the first step, but I needed to go deeper. I really needed to go into myself and understand what I was attracting, what I was choosing, what I was staying in. If I didn't want to keep having the same problems again, because I was done. I didn't want any more of this. So I knew that if I really wanted to make a change, sure, I was back on my feet now, but in order to actually make change for the future, I had to go to the uncomfortable place of going deeper and confronting those parts of myself I was avoiding. I think we all avoid it. We all don't really want to confront those parts of ourselves that feel like they're not perfect, or that feel like we're choosing or possibly contributing to the problem, because we don't want to think we're the problem. But I was so tired. I was clearly having repeated patterns, and I'm not doing that anymore. I don't want this anymore. I don't want this again. I had to go deeper. I had to heal that part of myself that was seeking familiarity over what I actually wanted. The way I did that, firstly, it took me a long time because I was blaming myself for clinging on too hard, but I didn't know how to not do that. So I felt incredibly guilty and shameful. I felt embarrassed. Even a year after a breakup, I felt embarrassed, but I didn't know how to be any different. And I didn't understand what the root of the problem was. When I actually spent time with myself, I was journaling every night and just blurting all my thoughts out. I was intentionally spending half an hour. I'd put on some drone, stress-free music, like that spa music that just makes you feel so zen, relaxed and calm. I purposefully put my phone away. I had the music, and I just sat there with my thoughts. Like meditating, but not focusing on my breath, literally letting whatever thoughts came into my mind. And as I was doing that, sure, the first thing you think about is what you had for lunch today. Then maybe it was that one conversation you had or interaction you had that day that was playing on your mind. And eventually, by asking myself why every time, and the more time I spent just sitting in silence, listening to those thoughts, the deeper my thoughts became, and the more I learned about myself. Often in the past, as soon as I would get to those darker or deeper thoughts that I was scared to confront, I would put on something, I would watch my favorite comfort show, I would eat my favorite comfort food, because I was uncomfortable and I needed to self-soothe. I would self-soothe in the way that worked for me. But actually, when I sat there in the discomfort, intentionally, and I chose, because I'd had enough of feeling rubbish about myself and about the experiences I was having. I was tired. I was so tired of the same experiences on repeat, the same dynamics on repeat. I was able to see and take accountability for the ways that I was contributing and see my flaws that were contributing. I was sitting there with my thoughts and really getting deep, and as tears were streaming down my face because of how deep and profound the realizations I was having about myself were, it was so necessary. It was so necessary because in having more knowledge about myself, I was able to see where I was going wrong, and I was able to make a change and do something about it. And even if that was just writing those thoughts down in my journal, just by getting to the deeper truth about ourselves, over time, our brain is subconsciously rewiring. When we make something about us that is subconscious into our conscious, we bring it into awareness, our brain can be rewiring in the background, can do a system update. It happens in the background. You can't do that rewiring. You don't unlock the password for the system update until it's in your conscious and you're aware of it. That's scary to do. To sit there and to have tears streaming down your face because what you're discovering about yourself is so profound. The root of the problem, the deeper truth behind everything, confronting that. It's challenging. It's so difficult. I understand why we block out and we self-soothe, because I was there. I've done it. But there's only so many times you can ignore yourself. You can ignore the same problem that is happening until you decide you've had enough and you want to do something different. You want different experiences. You don't want it to happen anymore. You don't want to experience the same thing again. Even if it's happened once and it was bad enough, you don't want to experience it again. The only way to not have the same experience again is to understand why it happened, what you did, and things about yourself that contributed to that dynamic. But once the tears had dried, I felt a really weird sense of calm. The thoughts stopped rushing. I felt peaceful because I'd found the answer. I'd found a way to avoid the same pain repeating itself again. That felt so empowering because I now had the ability and the way forward to stop that happening again, take my power back and my control back over what experiences I was having. I know it's scary, but sometimes if whatever it is you're going through, whatever experience you're having on repeat, and you don't know why, and you don't want it to happen again, investing that time and energy into just sitting with your thoughts every week, every day, every month, however often it is. It's a self-therapy session. You just sit there and you keep thinking. You let the thoughts get deeper. Whatever thoughts come to your mind, let them in. And when you start thinking of something deep about yourself, keep asking why. It's like the thing, ask why 5 times and you get to the real reason. And at the bottom of whatever pit of deep emotion is there, is serenity, is calm, is peace, is your answer, is control, is your power. You have to go through the storm, really, truly, you have to go through it. There's no other way. You can't go around it. You can't go under it, you can't go over it, you have to go through it. And if you go through it at a time that is on your own terms, put yourself in your comfort situation. Put yourself with that soothing music. Put that self in a nice warm blanket, or if you're in a warm climate, in a nice air-conditioned unit. Put yourself somewhere really comfortable in your safe place. Go through it. Go through the thoughts. Journal. Get it out. Once it's out, you've written the truth. You've accepted the truth. And now subconsciously, you can system update. That's what happened to me. And the more I had those intentional sessions where I sat through the discomfort, the more I learned about myself, about my pain, past, what was contributing. I was unlearning and I was able to make a change. I was able to decide. And because I understood myself, I wasn't going to do it anymore. Since then, I'm very happy to say that I've had good experiences because I've really truly healed and got to the bottom of the problem. I can't tell you what the answers are for whatever problem it is you have or what experience you keep having on repeat, but what I can say is you have the answers. You're just scared of them. You're scared to find them. You're scared on the journey it's going to have to take to get to them. But it's completely within your power to do so on your own terms when you decide. If you want different, you can absolutely have different. And there is calm and peace waiting for you. It completely changed how I went into any situation moving forward and just my approach to life. The way I viewed the world, I had a new level of perspective. And it meant that what I chose after that was so much better. It was so relieving. It just shows how quickly you can change when you choose what you're accepting. My whole mentality completely shifted. And I was able not just to show up for myself better and have positive experiences since, but to be able to show up for other people and everyone I was meeting better, giving them a new mindset or perspective or insight, which felt really powerful. I want to tell you a little travel story actually. About 6 or 7 months after the start of this really intentional growth journey, I was going to go on a full solo trip and go around Europe and go backpacking on wheels. I called it backpacking on wheels. So fun. Anyway, I was in Innsbruck, Austria, and I was stopped there for a day or two. I actually met some really, really interesting people in Innsbruck. I didn't have time to create long-lasting bonds with these people, but there was a woman I met. I was early 20s. This woman, she was early 30s. And one day, because it was rainy and I couldn't enjoy the lovely scenery of the mountains and go hiking, I decided I was going to go to the Swarovski Crystal Museum, which was so fun. If you're ever in Innsbruck, I highly recommend that, by the way. Anyway, this woman, she decides that she's going to tag along with me. And I'm very I love doing things by myself. So I was like, okay, but you never know what conversations you have with people. And this is why I'm here. I'm here to meet people and to always think you can learn from someone. We go on this trip and there's an hour bus ride there and an hour bus ride back. So it gives us plenty of time to talk. I was thinking, I'm really young. A 30-year-old is going to know so much more than me. She has way more life experience. There's so much advice that I could get from her. And the more I'm speaking to her, this happened with another woman over the age of 30 on this trip, by the way. I surprised myself and I was talking myself down based on my age. We had such dry chat. And then suddenly she was like, are you dating anyone? And I was like, no. But are you? And then Suddenly her whole face lit up. She was like, yes, so actually I'm dating this guy, blah, blah, blah. Once she started talking about this man, she didn't stop talking. But you know what? At least her energy rose, because I thought we were going to have a really dry afternoon. But suddenly she lit up. Anyway, she's talking about this man who apparently was her boyfriend. And she actually came to Austria to visit. She was saying, I've been here for 2 weeks, but I've not managed to see him yet. He's not been free. And I was thinking, what do you mean he's not been free? You've come to visit, but he's not been free? She's like, yeah, I feel like it's fine. I'm coming here for a little bit. I'm going to go somewhere else for a bit. And then I'm going to go back for maybe another week and see if he's free then. This woman had travelled maybe 5 to 10 hours of a flight to get to Austria to see this man that was apparently her boyfriend. What do you mean he doesn't have time to see you? You've travelled to him. What do you mean? I was so confused. I was like, what do you mean you've come here all this way for a guy that doesn't have time to see you, and then you're going to go back to give him another chance? I was like, really? And this is where I was like, wow, even as you get older, the same experiences keep happening with people unless they recognize their behaviors and change. Anyway, she's telling me more about this guy, about all of this, the way he treats her. It does not sound good. And the more I'm listening to this, I'm not there to judge her. I'm not there to give her advice. I was just there to listen and to see what she had to say. Then she actually asked me, and I responded, and I told her, I have had some bad experiences before, and I haven't had them since I started making all these changes and doing all this work. And she started asking me questions. She was trying to learn from me and see how she could find better guys. From the way she was speaking, I'm not going to go into details, but she was not showing respect to herself, and she was crossing boundaries that she didn't even realize she had because she hadn't set them for herself, just in order for this guy to like her. She was pretending to be something that she wasn't just to get a guy. She was seeking validation from this guy, and probably many guys before that. From some of the stories she was telling me, I was thinking, how on earth did you get into that situation and stay there and were okay with it? How did you not leave? When I say this guy was treating her so badly, it was worse than the dirt on the bottom of his shoe. I felt so sorry for her that she didn't feel like she was worth not doing anything that she didn't have to do, that she was enough in herself. I was telling her how I also, in the past, had bad experiences. I was crossing boundaries that I didn't realize I had for myself. I was doing things I wasn't comfortable with in order to have validation. I wasn't showing up for myself and holding boundaries in the way that I should have. Since doing all this work on myself, I learned what my boundaries are, and I have been living according to them since, and I'd only had good experiences since. I said to her, guys like boundaries. I said, you're not going to believe me, but guys love a boundary. Guys love when you tell them no. Guys love when you have standards. Ever since I've been having these standards, it's meant that the guys that didn't like them stayed away, and the guys that liked that I had boundaries were the right guys that were staying. It filtered them through. We went on this day and we looked around, and it ended up being a really lovely day. And she was asking me more about my personal experiences and what worked for me and what I did, and I was telling her. Anyway, I moved on. I got a train to Milan the next day, and I got a message on Instagram a few days later from this woman. She messaged me and she said, I did what you said. I said no to a guy. I just went on a date with him. We just talked. We just had a good time. I said, this isn't going to happen. And he liked me and he wants to go on another date with me, and he's trying with me. Bear in mind, she just had a boyfriend 5 minutes ago that she came to see who wasn't there, who couldn't even find the time to show up in his own city. And suddenly she'd left him behind and she'd gone on a date and had a positive experience. That genuinely warmed my heart so much, because you don't change those things until you choose differently and you stop repeating yourself. So that's a little lesson from her, from the story, that you can choose different, and you can choose it right now, and you can have different tomorrow. You can literally have it tomorrow, so choose different. I love that story so much. That just warms my heart. Your life only changes when the patterns in your life changes. If you're having the same experiences, we've spoken a lot about relationships, but I also mean in your work, financially, in your discipline, with money, with your family, or whatever it is that you're repeating yourself on in a different font. Patterns change, and when you change them, when you're not seeking what's just familiar, but you're seeking what you actually want and what is healthy, you're choosing different. That's when your life can change. That's when the trajectory changes. I'd love for you to join me and keep choosing differently with me, to question what we're doing, question our experiences, question what we're taught, what we think is correct, to not just sit there and accept things. If it's not working for us and we're accepting it because we think that's what it has to be, question it, and to get the deeper answers and find ways to make our lives even better. We don't choose what happens to us, but we choose what we do next. That concludes this episode. Hopefully this has changed the way you think about the patterns in your life and the experiences you're having. I'd love to know what you think. Please leave a review. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Send me a DM on Instagram at YALARA Collective. And I'll leave everything in the show notes for you. I really want to hear your thoughts, and every review helps get this podcast to everyone that needs to hear it. It also lets me know what's working for you and what isn't. So be completely honest, and we'll chat again in the next episode.